This episode is sponsored by Delaware Hyperbarics. Reduce your symptoms, speed your recovery, and reclaim your body at Delaware Hyperbarics, located in Lewis, Delaware. Their facility offers hyperbaric chambers, therapeutic massage, myofascial release, extracorporeal pulse activation therapy, red light therapy, low-level laser therapy, massage for motor vehicle accidents, active isolated stretching, and infrared saunas. To learn more, you can go to DelawareHyperbarics.com or call 302-313-5555. Crosstown Walkers has partnered with New Light CBD for these podcast episodes. If you use CBD as a product to help with your pain management or mental health, all Crosstown Walker listeners can use promo code CTW at newlightcbd.com to receive 10% off your order with New Light CBD. That is NULIGHT using promo code CTW. This promo code will be valid until the end of the month. New Light CBD is offering free shipping as well for the end of the month for all listeners. New Light CBD is established and manufactured in the first town in the first state of Lewis, Delaware. To make a donation to the Crosstown Walkers NAMI fundraiser, you can head over to donate.nami.org/crosstownwalkers. You can also head over to crosstownwalkers.com/fundraiser to stay up to date with all the latest information regarding the fundraiser. All patrons will be entered into our gift raffle for a chance to win one of the following items: a CBD bundle full of various products from New Light CBD, 5 infrared sauna sessions at Delaware Hyperbarics, a free brain mapping at Brain Love Neurotherapy, a $250 value for you to learn how your brain is functioning. This involves 2 50-minute sessions, one to get EEG mapped and the second to review your brain maps. And lastly, Lynn McDonald's first book, The Great Tree and the Ladybug. For any questions, you can email devincanfield@gmail.com or reach out to us on social media via Instagram. If you would like to extend your support to Crosstown Walkers, you can head over to buymeacoffee.com/CTWmusic. For our 8th episode, we have Leah Beach, the founder of the Developing Artist Collaboration. In this episode, she opens up about her mental health and what she did to overcome her own challenges to create a very successful nonprofit artist organization. She also opens up about traveling the world while photographing those struggling with dementia. So, without further ado, here we go. Episode number 8.
My name is Leah Beach. I'm a master, I guess, what you sort of said earlier, I'm a master of none. My job is kind of my life, and not in like a workaholic sense, but in a sense of I've just kind of gone on this journey since I was like 24 and made all my passions in the world my job. And that's kind of led into me being a full-time artist. My art is kind of whatever's taking me in whatever direction. I've been a photojournalist. I've done some really cool campaigns around the world, in particular with my project on global dementia. I'm also a mural artist of sorts. I'm self-taught. I went to art school for photography, so you kind of learn some other things in art school too. So all 2 years of that, I learned some drawing techniques that have kind of evolved. But the most important thing I do is I run my nonprofit that I founded called the Developing Artist Collaboration. So that's what I do.
Beautiful. When you say dementia and people hear dementia or Alzheimer's, how relevant is that to mental health? Maybe in a different way, but can you give us some insight on mental health and what your project was and maybe paint that picture? Because your photography, for sure, captured it. But in your words, can you kind of explain where you think dementia sits with the mental health world? And you saw it in very unique places too, which is amazing. Would you be able to share some of that?
Yeah. So I really believe that dementia is very two-sided. There's the one side of it that it definitely affects the person. A lot of people don't know that Alzheimer's is a form of dementia, and dementia essentially is a plaque buildup in the brain. And depending on where that plaque buildup is in the brain is the type of dementia you get. So also I want to say I'm not a doctor, so I've just kind of been on this journey. So please, any like real medical health advice, like talk to a doctor. I've just kind of fell into this world and have made it a really big passion of mine. But this is at least like what I understand of it. But so there is the dementia that affects the patient, and then there's the dementia that affects the family. Because at the end of the day, affects the caretakers, and the mental health of the caretaker ends up really being a huge part of kind of the tragedy of dementia, because eventually the person that has it, the patient, stops functioning and doesn't remember and kind of lives in a state of no past or present, and kind of, I guess you can kind of think of it as like reverting back to childhood, like they act like a toddler, and it's the family that kind of watches it. So there's a lot involved with mental health. And I mean, at the end of the day, like this is a cognitive disorder. So this is, a lot of emotions, a lot of terrible things happen along with dementia. And the really unfortunate part of this disease is it affects elderly people mostly. I mean, very little affect people in their 50s or so, early onset, but and when it comes to the importance of a disease and how it's viewed globally, unfortunately, the mentality of they're just going to die anyways is definitely up there. So it is not really globally seen as that big of a deal, and that has made this a pandemic of just mass information, stigma, abuse. It's very, very sad, very complicated disease.
And where did you go for your travels to capture all of this? There was a lot of places you had been to. Can you share with us some of those places?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the most important kind of start to all this was just the curiosity. I photographed my great-grandmother when I was in my second year at Delaware College of Art and Design. She had a form of dementia for 14 years. She had dementia. It was awful. And it was a huge burden on our family. And not to say she was a burden, but anyone that has had a family member with dementia understands the financial and emotional parts of it. I mean, there's like the one side of it, like when you go visit Nana, it's real funny when she flirts with your brother, but it's like, it's very sad. So I basically and there was another part to this too. Like I spent all this time with my great-grandmother, I would go visit her, but when I was taking photos of her, it was after like my family had left, and I was spending hours of time just like watching these people exist. And at the end of the day, it's like what these people were doing. They're just existing. They weren't living their lives. They were waiting to die. And I watched, these people sitting in a room, and all these people have like DNRs, and they're just kind of left here and just kind of hope that one day they have a heart attack or something to put them out of their misery. And it's awful. It is so sad. And it's just like, these are people that their bodies have outlived their brains. And I just became super interested in what else was out there and about this disease, because it just was so wild to me. And I was put in a really awesome position where I was able to connect with people with my work that kind of inspired me to look at it globally. And at the time I was 23 and had no money, and but I just had this like passion for traveling, and that took me to Alzheimer's. I literally Googled global dementia and found Alzheimer's Disease International. And they had a list of 72 countries, and I'm not kidding, Kenya just like jumped off the page at me. I Googled like healthcare volunteer organizations, and I found Global Vision International. They had a internship in community development and critical infrastructure, which I had no idea what that was at the time.
So, okay. So you go and you Google all these places, and they show up. and you go out, I wouldn't say on a whim, but you followed this intuition to begin this journey. What'd you find when you got there? So you had the personal experience beforehand with your own family.
Yeah.
When you get to these places, and I guess it's Kenya first, what do you find?
Well, when I got to Kenya, I really didn't have any idea what I was getting myself into or what I was doing. I knew that I was interested in fighting dementia, but honestly, I think I was more so in line with the life experience. I asked a couple questions like going into it, but I didn't really push it because I just kind of wanted to naturally kind of find my way into this whole process. So when I got there, I was living in a communal space with like a bunch of people from all around the world. Many of them I'm still like great friends with. And I mean, it was a life-changing, like, oh my God. But like the really special part of this whole experience was the base that we were living at. Like this like volunteer organization that had been there for like 12 years. The base was closing because of like volunteer interest. So a lot of people really probably like aren't like familiar with like voluntourism, but it's actually a super non-sustainable, very like hurtful practice. Like if you ever see pictures of like white people standing in front of a classroom teaching like kids in a village somewhere, like that's actually like messed up. Like you should teach the teacher. That's what sustainability is. It's not like putting children with, people that are untrained, and it's a whole other thing. But essentially, like when I got there, it was like a really interesting shift because it no longer was about the volunteer, which it normally is with these types of organizations, but it was about the community because we were wrapping up like all of this incredible work. And it wasn't just the community development. It was also a ton of environmental work. It was a ton of science data like being taken from that, plus like work we were doing in their health clinic. So it was like a very rounded experience. At the end of the experience, after like really being able to do a ton of work as an artist, which is actually what inspired me to start DAC. Yeah, so like doing all this work in this village, at the end of kind of being there for 4 months, I've kind of built a lot of relationships with like people that were very like prominent in the community, and a big part of our healthcare program there was people doing outreach. Working with the community health workers, because that's like a lot of what happens in developing countries is you'll have a clinic with one nurse, not a doctor, and there will be about 25 like volunteers that serve like 20,000 people. It's wild.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, it's really insane. And these amazing volunteers, like, the nurse practitioner can only do so much. So really what our job was is that we would go on Google and teach them about like diabetes and hypertension and like family planning and like all different types of things. So one like particular day, like I just so happened to be working with a nurse from the UK she was a frail nurse there. So she had a lot of experience with dementia, and we started having a conversation with them about it, and none of them knew what we were talking about. And I was like, we were trying to describe it, and they didn't really follow. So art is a form of communication. It doesn't need words. That's the whole point of it. I like took the photos at my great grandmother and showed them. They go, oh, you mean when people like get lost? Like it clicked to them like what dementia meant. And they're like, oh, well, we just like lock them in rooms and like.
What are your thoughts when you get to that point and you find that they have this reaction? The key turns, it clicks for them, and then they show you how they're dealing with that. Like what runs through your head in that moment?
Well, I mean, and I also have to say at this point, I had no real, like, besides my great grandmother, I had no real information about dementia or like really understood it. It made me really, really not sad, but just like, it made me feel like it didn't make sense that this thing that affected so many people at home just wasn't a part of the discussion, and like that elderly people were, I don't know, it's hard to kind of it's also, I was at a very different place in my life. I was like in my early 20s, and I think there was this big part of me that felt like super empathetic towards these people, but at the same time, like I was like, there's this disconnect between the world and what it's in front of me right now, and it just doesn't make sense to me. So
yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
And now
so
looking back, it must be very interesting to reflect on all that stuff.
Oh my God. I mean, that time of my life is the most important part of my life. Like I miss it, living in that village every day. I think about it every day. That was such a special moment, and I could never recreate it in that way. But it's incredible that it did happen, because that's when I discovered like the power that art has, and the power that like I could have as a photographer, to share the story of these people without like exploiting them, and without like, kind of, I mean, that's when you really, as a young artist and as like a young person, you really learn your morals with like what you're passionate about. And I think there's a lot of photographers out there, and a lot of people that would sell the like the pain, and the kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but sex sells in the photojournalism world. That's more or less what I'm trying to say. That's not how I choose to take pictures, not what I choose to share. But
what was the intention?
I think that's something that grew as time went with the project. When I was in Kenya, the intention was more of an exploration. I didn't really know what I was seeing. I didn't really understand it. At this point, I didn't know that there was no dementia-friendly communities in Kenya, and that information wasn't correctly being represented to the community. We did our best, but there was a lot that I had to learn. But I think, in general, as a photographer, I mean, this is the same reason why, like, there's this woman photographer who tripped a Syrian refugee when they were fleeing away from like a refugee camp. I don't really remember the story, but a lot of people probably are familiar with this story. And she tripped a child to get a photograph. And there's a lot of stories of photojournalists doing really horrible things, or photographing like really terrible, sad things in order to sell pictures. And for me, I mean, it's important to know that like up until me going to India, I didn't get paid for this work. This was just what I was passionate about. I choose to, the way I photograph people, I love to give them dignity. It's why a lot of my work you'll see is from a kind of a downward looking up, not like standing over people and photographing. Like I'm pretty much squatting on the ground whenever I take photos, especially people with dementia. And I choose to photograph in, light. I like to try to empower people as much as I can with my work and show the emotion, and kind of, people with dementia, I always describe the way that they look at you. They don't look at you, they look through you. And I kind of try everything I can to take myself out of the work. Yeah, it's intense.
Damn. When you say it like that, there was one picture that stood out to me, because when you had showed me, you were like, do you see it in this picture? And I'm looking at, I think it was like a nurse, and you might be able to kind of clarify it a little bit more. And I see this woman sitting in a chair, and I'm like, shit, I don't see it. And then you point out to me that she's strapped to a wall. All the pictures really stood out to me, because you can see you're capturing something in these people that just goes to show it's like a different world. When you showed me the pictures, that's what I felt like I was seeing. I felt like, wow, like this is on planet Earth. And yeah. I can't put myself in that experience. I'd have to go there and see it. And I think that's what's so powerful about like your photography, is that it did put me in that place. But that one picture in particular of that woman strapped to the wall, and you were like, yeah, they just do this. That's well, the
other thing is you have to take yourself out of it. Like there was an island that was right off of like the village that we lived in, and we actually lived on that island for a little bit. So I had really close connections with the people in that village. And when they were telling me the stories of like, they just kind of locked people in their rooms, and, sometimes they got lost, and like, and like the one man, it's like a man that's in like a white ripped shirt, and he has like a really intense stare. he was like communicating that he doesn't remember how to fish and he doesn't want to live anymore. And he told his family that he wants to die. And like, it's just like, I think like when that happened, that's when I kind of realized like, oh, so this is what it's like to be a photojournalist. And then kind of like from there, that's when I went to South Africa. And then that's when I really started to learn about dementia, and also just like how awful people going through these types of things in developing countries, especially in really rural areas, is just heartbreaking. And it's a story that it absolutely needs to be told. And actually right now more than ever, it does kind of, I have a lot of feelings about this project right now. Since of the 5 organizations that license my work, 3 of them, I think 4 of them are dissolved because they were all UK based and they were all government funded. And when you have a nationalist leader, kind of like we did, things like that get dissolved and the people just get forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
But the big thing is like when I was in South Africa, that was the first time I truly knew that this was a really important thing to share. When I like went to a really rural township and was photographing, and how this all happened was me literally just going online and finding people. Like I just looked up Alzheimer's South Africa, and they like, same with Ermita, which is like in Guatemala, like all these places that I've made the partnerships with, they just were so thankful to have their story told that it was not a problem for me to make connections. But like Alzheimer's South Africa, when I went to a really rural area in South Africa and photographed, and that's when like one of the witch doctors, which that's what a lot of like the medicine is in that area, was saying that like some of the rural areas, like they sometimes like burn people alive with dementia because they think that they're witches. And at the end of the day,
they burn people alive. Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
And that just happens. Like that's part of their protocol. Sometimes.
I mean, like at the end of the day, this is what I kind of pull together from this is
sure.
I don't know. I didn't see it. Thank God. I would not be able to handle that. It's just like sometimes people wander off, and at the end of the day, you're talking about an area in the world where like, oh my God, like mental health is like just recognized as being bewitched, and you're told to go to like pay a witch doctor to get rid of your evil, like Satan inside of you and stuff. It's wild. But I asked the healer was like, if you guys had like more advocacy and, if you were to bring like me and photos to one of these witch doctors and I could talk to them, like, would that make a difference? And he was like, yeah, but unfortunately, like nobody cares. So yeah. And you're looking at probably one of the people on this planet that genuinely I mean, I really gave it is my life's work. I'm not done with it. It didn't end up well. I'm literally I'm like a photographer. I'm an associate of fine arts. I'm a bartender. I know nothing about dementia. And I went to South Africa, I went to Kenya, took these pictures, and then I did the same thing. I went to Guatemala. My family was like planning a backpacking trip, and I was like, hey, while we're there, I'm gonna go to Guatemala City for a week and take pictures, and the same exact thing. And that was when I was in, a really area. And actually Guatemala is quite cutting edge with their dementia treatment, just because someone really high in politics' mother had dementia. And that's what it is at the end of the day. Like the countries that are progressive are going to be the ones that have the resources because it matters. They take, and of course, like I'm always taken to like really nice facilities, and you can see where all, people that have money go. And then that's unfortunately when you get to a place where you see things like, like in that photograph where the woman was tied to the wall. The reason she was tied to the wall wasn't because she was being abused. The reason she was tied to the wall is because it was a, not government funded facility that was in a really lower income area run by a woman that gets no help from the government. And I think she had over 40 patients, and it was just her and a helper. So these are people that were in homeless situations. These are people that were in, like they were like when someone's in a cartel and they have a parent, And a lot of times, like, there's a lot of neglect that happens there. And even though, like, you know, the way that people treat elderly in developing countries is so different, it's just people, there's somewhere, like, there's nowhere for people to go. I mean, even in our country, like, people that are in really bad situations, like, you'll end up in places where there's not a lot of resources, there's not a lot of help. And in this particular case, I walked in the facility, people were tied to walls because it was either that or just die. Like, they wouldn't have food or a bed. Like, and then that's where the responsibility was given to me. Like, I don't want to show people scared tied to a wall. Like, and that's why I tried my best in those photos. And that's why I said to you, like, do you notice what's happening here? And a lot of people at first glance don't see people tied. They see, you know, people like in this facility. So there, it's really hard because, like, obviously that is the bigger part of it, is like, yeah, like, it is abuse, but that has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with, like, my opinion. It has to do with these people, like, getting to have a warm place to sleep and food instead of just starving to death and dying. Like, it's heavy.
You said this kind of inspired you, and I'm going to when I show the pictures, kind of let people see and get a visual of what we're discussing. But you said this ends up inspiring the DAC, and I kind of want to hear a little bit about that. And this kind of being
I can kind of bridge the two to, oh, sorry, you go.
Yeah. So if you,
I can kind of bridge the two together.
Yeah, go for it. And then I just think it's great that you've created this kind of platform and creative outlet for all these artists in the area. And we could kind of start, like, what made you create that? And if you want to kind of go from there.
Yeah, I mean, like, to kind of bridge these two together, I took all these photographs that I'd taken, and I literally contacted Alzheimer's Disease International, which was the organization that I originally, like, Googled, and they invited me to come out to London. I flew out to London. I presented the work to them, and they were like, we love it. We want to license all of it. They licensed it. And also they hired me to go not only to 2 different national conferences and present and kind of be a part of their whole mix, but they hired me to go to India and take pictures, which was really incredible. And that's where this all kind of took a turn. It was an amazing opportunity. ADI is an amazing organization. The people I worked with were fantastic. The problem became for me with my ethics and the work, because it turned more into the like media circus of, like, we want to kind of juice up the stories a little. They didn't say that. It just was like, it's just been an interesting kind of turn. When I went to India, it was when I was bartending full time. At this point, I'd already started DAC, because the best part about this whole thing is just the reason I do DAC, the reason that I did what I did, is because I truly believe there's this beautiful giving nature in artists. Society takes advantage of that. But my purpose and dedication of my life and my life's work is to harness that energy and to turn it into something really good that builds the world, and also the artist. So the work I did when I was in India, I was bartending full time, definitely was in a really dark place in my life, and jumped on a plane 4th of July, like the week before 4th of July weekend, and went to India to photograph for 3 days and come back and then bartended again. And I really went down that was definitely the darkest part of my life, because I felt like I was exploiting people. I felt I lost the passion in my project. At that point, didn't feel I really had a purpose with DAC. It hadn't really gotten off the ground. We had no money. I was, like, going through a breakup. It was really hard. But the beautiful part of that was that, like, I just decided to turn it around. And in like 1 week, I broke up with my boyfriend. I quit my bartending job. I got rid of a bunch of, like, people that were not a bunch, but a handful of, like, toxic people involved with DAC. And I decided to completely turn my life around. And I told ADI that I didn't feel right doing these pictures. I didn't feel like I was doing them on my own terms. It wasn't EDI. It was a different organization that I was working with that worked with them, which that organization actually no longer exists.
Could you kind of steer us from here kind of to now where you're at with DAC and this really, really dark place, and taking the jump and making those choices and recognizing those things? You know, how did it get from there to where it has become now?
I got back from, to give a little bit of a timeline, I got back from Africa in 2014. I started this event called Sip and Shop, which brought some artists together on Black Friday weekend to sell their work. In 2015, the Dementia Project was rocking and rolling. I was in Guatemala in 2016. I was in 2017 is when I went to London. And then 2018 was when I went to like Japan and did a conference. And this is also the same time I was bartending full-time, managing the restaurant that I was managing, that I was working in. And I founded DAC into a nonprofit in 2017, which at the time it was really kind of like us doing these like little pop-up vendor events, because that's what I thought was like what artists needed. And we didn't have that in the community. And then that kind of evolved in 2018. I kind of lost my passion for everything. I mean, I definitely was contemplating suicide. I was in a very like toxic relationship because I made it toxic. I was drinking heavily, and then I was, bartending crazy hours. I would work. I was a workaholic. I would wake up, I would work, do DAC stuff all day long. I wouldn't ask for any help. I was sabotaging myself. I was getting angry at people for no reason. When I got back from India, it was a beautiful experience all around. But when I got back from India, I just was like, I don't want to do any of this anymore. I don't want to live. I wanted to dissolve DAC. And I called my friend Tommy and told him that I was kind of at the point where I was like even thinking of like suicide. And we talked. I mean, thankfully we went and talked through it. And my mental health is in a way that I didn't feel that I needed like professional help. I just really felt like I needed to work through and ask people for help. And that's what I did. And I literally, like I said, that week I ended my relationship. I made a lot of effort to really change myself, because I was the root of all my problems in my life. And that took a turn. And ever since 2018, like I've definitely have gone through a lot with, my own mental health and my journey, but like that was the lowest point in my life. I feel like the biggest part of all this was like actually like acknowledging that like I had a problem. Like my depression and anxiety had gotten so out of control, and it was a direct result of my workaholism. I don't know, my drinking too much, partying too much, like all these things. And I just made a conscious effort to change it. Unfortunately, like as a kid, my parents manipulated me through therapy, and I like talk therapy doesn't work for me, but I found my own outlets through yoga, through meditation, through having a shaman, and doing that was really helpful to me too. And honestly, the more I worked on myself, the bigger DAC got, the more I trusted people, the more I trusted my friends. And then I trusted everything to a point where I quit, bartending full time at this point. And I, financially really struggled for a couple of years. So kind of going into 2019, and that's where everything started to pivot. And that's when I discovered that the importance wasn't these like vendor events. The whole purpose of DAC is growing artists, giving artists opportunity, giving them studio space, giving them resources, career development, website building, marketing, all these cool things, which we couldn't afford any of it, but we were doing it for a couple people. We had like 4 art studios. And then that's where I got the idea of sustainability with us selling our DIY kits, and founded this like part of our organization called Dirty Hands, which was like one of our warehouses we had. And we just made it into a space for people to come make art. And it was all going pretty smooth. And then the pandemic came. And like everybody, so like everybody, we had to pivot, and we had enough money in April of 2020 to maybe make it 1 month. We didn't qualify for PPP. thank God I had my own small business that I was able to get it myself. I got like $7,000. I put it right in the organization. And the very first week of shutdown, we started selling DIY kits. So we took the DIY projects like bottle openers and string art and acrylic pours and macrame and put them in boxes. I figured out how to start an e-commerce. I built a website. I mean, tireless work, but so rewarding. It was incredible. I just put all of this energy in this organization, and then we got the money that I could actually start investing in people. And that's where it's changed so much. And like, we were very lucky that we generated enough income to keep it going. We came up with this program to really support artists through building websites to get their artwork out there during the pandemic. And I changed the model of what arts nonprofits are, because we didn't make it about the arts. Made it about artists. And that's where everyone gets it wrong. These organizations that, you know, charge a membership fee and give you a gallery show, it's just not sustainable. It's not impactful. And as an artist, it's been a journey to not only employ other artists, but to make this passion and this model that doesn't exist in the world. And it really all came from this idea that like, there are other artists out there that feel the way I do. And it got enough attention that this spring we got a $157,000 grant from the Longwood Foundation that I was able to hire staff. Like, I have a full-time staff now. We've pivoted the whole vendor program to create this like weekly art market. We've developed our artist development program. We got another building. We turned it into like 18 art studios. Our career resource building program is just like mind blowing. Like, we do all these incredible workshops now, and we're working on developing a whole music side of the organization, a culinary side, because we believe that art is so much more than just paint and brush. And the most important part about all of this is we're finally at the place that I can start doing the whole purpose of why I started DAC, and that is to turn it into an international outreach organization, because I want artists to do what I did and to feel the way I did and feel this sense of purpose and passion and to change the world. And I truly believe that this model is going to be sustainable as we grow. We evolved Dirty Hands into, actually, it's now called Out of the Box DIY, into a national e-commerce that will sustain our programming, so that we're placing artists and we're paying them to do outreach work like I did in our community, as well as international, in partnership with other organizations. And we're going to operate off of $500,000 this year. We have a lot to go still. It's November, but I believe it. And it's just it's just wild how this all came full circle. And, I was just a kid who jumped on a plane and had an idea. And now it's becoming a pretty incredibly well-oiled, wild machine that just kind of is going well.
You mentioned like talk therapy wasn't really your thing, which is cool, because we've had a lot of people on here where we talk about all these different outlets. And I do think it is worth saying that, hey, that might not be for people. Some people it could be. And we've said in every episode that each person is very unique, and whatever ingredients they need to achieve the outcome that they're looking for, it's kind of for them to discover. When you talk about the workaholism, if that's what we're going to call it, or working so much, what's the difference between being passionate about something and working in that manner?
I was working for a different reason. And I think that's what it comes down to. I think back when I was going through that dark time, I was working for the sake of working, because I didn't understand delegation and how important it is to have a team and to be supported, and to rely on others. So it was almost like it's mine. I did it myself. Nobody helped me. It's mine. I'm doing it. And I've never really, even through my harder times in my life, I've never been someone that's been one to gloat or to say how wonderful I am. Because I know I've done really great things, and I'm really proud of myself, and I'm working on the self-confidence, but but I would internalize so much and feel like I was weak and I wasn't able, I wasn't a good leader unless I did everything myself. And I think that's where a lot of people that, workaholics, I think that's where it comes down to. It's control. It's wanting to control everything. And it be your thing and that it was your idea and you did it and this is mine. And it's like, I think that was the big learning experience for me. I also like founded an organization, was a photojournalist, did all these things. I have no background in business. I have no background in finance. I have no background in any of these things. I go to Dr. Google for everything. And I think that's why DAC was so stunted in the beginning, was just because I had so much to learn and I was too afraid to ask. And that's really the difference between those 2 points. When I was, really struggling, it was because I was so afraid of losing control and of not being good enough, and all of these like deep-rooted issues I have, I'm still working through. But now why it's so different, and when I work really hard, like I drove to Bethesda, I'm driving right now. I drove down there today, I consciously decided that I was going to do it Saturday, but that I wouldn't get 2 days off, and I deserve 2 days off because I work really hard during the week and I prioritize my time differently. And that's been the big shift with, like, I work a lot and I'm passionate about what I do. And now I'm a lot more impactful. So I guess it's kind of been a journey of like figuring out a healthy level of work. And that's really coincided with me dealing with my mental health.
Mm-hmm. And amen. Amen. I get what you're saying. And even the like idea of control, I can relate to that too. And I think that was something that I had come to realize maybe you can relate, was because of a fear. It was like a fear-based thought. And I think it was from never feeling a sense of safety or control in ways. Mm-hmm. Now, everything is so complex. And I think that even discussing this as I go to say this, that's where, for anyone listening, there are resources and there are people out there that can help you process and look and see what might be underneath the surface. Because yes. I think mental health can be a surface level thing where I think we're beginning to look deeper into our minds to understand where the source of these issues could be. And I think that's what therapy or whatever type of process it is for you said, even like working with a shaman or like an energy healer, whatever that medium is for you that translates to your truth, that's what it is. It's like there's something out there that can reconnect you to your truth, and you can address the source of what's hindering you from experiencing your truth. And that's what I think I found, that like the control part of my mind is this very sad fear, and a fear of like, just like you were kind of saying, almost like not being good enough, like feeling so bad about myself. But there's like a beautiful process that comes from uncovering those things, because it's like it opens a door to new possibilities. It increases your potential, and it seems like that reflected in your business. And I think that everything you said, I have to commend you for sharing. And for people listening, these are examples of where I feel that every individual, myself included, like I don't sit here saying these things to be like, hey, guess what? I'm not even sitting on a chair. I'm floating because I've figured out the path to the universe. What I am saying is that we have a potential that we can tap into. And I just think that we have a truth to what we are. And when we listen to the lies that our mind has created for so many different reasons, I think that's where we feel so disconnected from ourselves. Like we feel so disconnected from, and we can become depressed or anxious. And it happens very often, even for me sometimes still. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that it sounds like you found a way to acknowledge and look at the door that you could open up to walk down a path that was going to start leading you to your truth.
Yeah.
Is that maybe fair?
It totally makes sense. And I think it's also like, believing that we're a work in progress at all times and nobody has their shit together. I say this at least once a day to everyone, because I'll have one of my staff members come to me and ask me a question. I'll be like, what do you think? And they'll be like, oh, X, Y, and Z, but like, I don't know. And I'm like, I don't know either. None of us know what we're doing. We literally, and like when you're on that journey with discovering, how to quote unquote fix yourself, like, I think that no one's ever fixed. And I think if anyone believes they're fixed, then they're probably worse off than anyone in progress. But the most important thing is like knowing that you can get, like, we're capable of overcoming so much. Like, and when you're going through literally the worst day of your life, like, you will probably be going through something worse at some point, and there's going to be so much good along the way too. It kind of makes it worth it to at least deeply consider continuing on. And it really, like, for people that go through and struggle with thoughts of suicide, that thought of like, am I worth this? Like, is this worth this? Like, do the people around me like really need me? When you go through all those thoughts, I think it's really important to know that I don't think there's ever an answer to it. I think you just have to believe. You have to believe that there is that purpose and there is that reason to keep going.
As we do conclude with everything, what are some of the things that you've done to establish that confidence in yourself, to relinquish the control? Because control makes us feel safe, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we are safe or that is what's going to keep us safe. That's something I kind of realized for myself. And I realized that was kind of a defense mechanism for me. And I think the reason we might not look at those things sometimes is because, like, if we do look at that, it kind of makes us reflect and say, man, like I have an imperfection, but it's like, maybe instead of an imperfection, it's just something to understand, something to evolve from, and maybe something to actually alchemize into a new form. And I just want to know, for you, what were some of the resources, or what did you do that has and you still do to stay on track for feeling confident in yourself? Like you said, we're going to have bad days. We have bad days. It's a journey. But what now do you do, and what were you doing that kind of grounded you on a path to feeling more confident in these decisions?
It's an everyday process, but I think that's
a great answer. Even in that, like, it's an everyday. Yeah.
I think the very important thing for me was the day that I realized that there was something wrong, and I stopped ignoring it, and I stopped thinking that, like, I don't have problems. I don't have mental health issues. I don't have, like, it honestly hasn't been until the last couple of years that people are even having these discussions.
I agree.
Yeah.
Even more so the past 2, let's even say maybe 4 years, 5 years even. I truly feel like we've made a huge change. And then the pandemic hit, and now, not that it was the pandemic that made everybody speak up, but it definitely is very, very new. Yeah.
And I think for me, I'm just totally honest. Like, I've gone through 2 divorces, not me, myself. Sorry. I was a child of divorce. My parents got divorced when I was 3, my mom, her first marriage. And then her second marriage, I went through another divorce when I was like 13, which also I had to uproot my life and move to Alabama to live with my dad. My parents did a real number on me as a kid. And I think the biggest thing that happened to me was, my whole life I was told, you weren't sexually abused, you weren't physically abused, your life hasn't been that bad. It hasn't been that bad. So I was kind of put that in my head, and I was very mentally abused, very manipulated as a child, very verbally abused. And it is taken until now, really, for me to finally, like, not only accept it, but to start to be on this path of forgiveness. and the hardest part of the forgiveness hasn't been to my parents, because I'm still not there yet, but it has been for myself. And I think, like, for me, I didn't realize until about a month ago, to be honest with you, that the deep root of my, like, body image issues and my self-confidence issues and my trust issues all stemmed from childhood trauma. I didn't understand that I even had that, because my parents manipulated me so much as a child. And, therapy was just one part of that, but there were, lots of things that I've had to kind of overcome and kind of go through. I had a really low point earlier this year. I want to say July. I had a low point, but I have a chosen family. I have such an incredible small group of friends that I can just trust. And I have staff and board of directors that believe in me and are so trusting on my opinion that I owe it to them to always be in check with myself on my mental health and on, what I need. So I really started in the last couple months, trudging through my childhood trauma, and I've done it through hypnosis. It's been a really interesting journey with that. I have one session left. I've gone through 6 sessions of hypnosis with a woman who lives in Arizona. And the reason I went into the hypnosis sessions was because a lot of my issues have been coming out in my dating and relationships. I've had a really hard time, not only meeting someone, but not ruining it in my head before anything even happened. It's kind of wild, but it all kind of came to discovering like childhood trauma. I had really dug deep in the back of my subconscious, and I've really brought it out over the last month, and it has really transformed my life. It's made me understand who I am and why I do things. It's made me accept things about myself that I can't control. And with all of that, it's helped me to actually kind of accept it. And now the peace I have in my life, even during, like, we're living through the most difficult time of our year with, our largest event. A big mural project I have going on. I have, going through a transition with my living situation. I have roommate moving out. My cat's got a cone on. And honestly,
not the cone. No,
I know he has cat acne.
Really?
I know, it's weird. Yeah. So he's adorable in his cone, but it's wild. Like, hypnosis has, I am treating my life differently. I'm living differently. I really didn't start to feel it until a couple of days ago, because I've also been half-assing the hypnosis, because you have to do like a massive amount of affirmations, basically.
I've asked everybody this, and I will then continue to ask you. What would you say to somebody who maybe is a little hesitant to face the things that are in their mind, or they're nervous, or they may not feel inclined that they have to, but say someone is feeling something that they're like, something's wrong, something doesn't feel right, I don't know what to do. Do you have any sort of opinion on maybe what they could do, or any sort of insight just from your own experience?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that everyone should know is that there's no such thing as normal. I think society has made normal this idea that a normal person doesn't have thoughts of depression or anxiety or loneliness or heartbreak or all these things. Like, society makes us power through when we feel bad, because normal people don't get that upset. And if you get sad, that's fine, but like, don't stay sad for too long. And I think that we create normal in our head, and we make ourselves a normal version of ourselves and all of these different things. And I think that a beautiful part of living is not to crave normalcy and to embrace what you're going through. And if you're afraid of exploring how you feel, or even asking the question or sharing it or journaling or whatever, the fact that you're already acknowledging it is a lot further than people that I think are really in trouble. Society puts a lot of pressure on us to fit into this mold of what is trustworthy and what is like a good partner, what is a good boss or a good, son or daughter, or all these different things, that we are constantly putting this pressure on ourselves not to disappoint people and not to disappoint ourselves. And I think that one of the beautiful things about exploring mental health and being passionate about your own mental health is when you better yourself, you literally better everything around you. So if you're like me and you're a little bit of a martyr sometimes, if you don't do it for yourself, do it for the other people that you love, because investing in yourself and your mental health will change ultimately your life, but more importantly, as is important, will change your work and what you're passionate about.
This episode is sponsored by Delaware Hyperbarics. Reduce your symptoms, speed your recovery, and reclaim your body at Delaware Hyperbarics, located in Lewis, Delaware. Their facility offers hyperbaric chambers, therapeutic massage, myofascial release, extracorporeal pulse activation therapy, red light therapy, low-level laser therapy, massage for motor vehicle accidents, active isolated stretching, and infrared saunas. To learn more, you can go to DelawareHyperbarics.com or call 302-313-5555. NAMI envisions a world where all people affected by mental health can live healthy, fulfilling lives, supported by a community that cares. NAMI provides advocacy, education, support, and public awareness so that all individuals and families affected by mental health can build better lives. Today, NAMI is an alliance of more than 600 local affiliates and 48 state organizations who work in your communities to raise awareness and provide support and education that was not previously available to those in need. Crosstown Walkers stands by organizations like NAMI. To show your support, go to donate.nami.org/crosstownwalkers, or you can head to crosstownwalkers.com/fundraiser to find more information.